Alright, so exercise 2 here is a little bit more difficult. It's asking us to write a function that returns the letter grade if you give it a exam score and a percentile based exam score to return the letter grade. In this, they provide this table for us to show us what we should have our letter grades assigned to. And down here they tell us a little bit more useful information that you should really try to remember, because we use it a lot when we are talking about ranges in computer science. We talk about inclusive and inclusive and exclusive or non-inclusive ranges, meaning that a square bracket is a closed interval and a round bracket or parentheses is an open interval. A closed interval is inclusive, meaning that this includes 80, so if you had 80 it would be a B, whereas this 90 is exclusive. It's an open interval, which means that if you got a 90 it would not be a B. Same thing down here. Inclusive for 70 with the closed interval means that if you get a 70 it would be a C. Exclusive for the open interval here for 80, meaning that if you got an 80 it would not be a C. So it goes 70 through 79 here and 80 through 89 here, essentially. So we need to make sure that that works. So let's go ahead and start by defining a function. Let's call it exam letter. That's a bad name for a function, but we'll just let it stand as it is here. Let's exam score exam. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to think out what I should ask you here. So score exam is what we'll do. I try to make my functions be verbs when at all possible because I want them to do something. So here, this function scores an exam, and it's going to take the exam score, so we'll call that score. And it takes that as a string. So we don't have to actually do any input or anything in here. We wouldn't want to do any input inside the function. We would want to do an input inside of our main function and then pass in that input into score exam. We want our functions to be as separate from things like inputs and print statements as possible, generally speaking. So takes string score and returns letter value of score. Okay. So we need to think about what we're going to do here, and we're going to create kind of stacked logic, where if we have a score greater than or equal to 90, it's not gonna work. I'm not sure if that's gonna work. I can't remember if Python does auto casting like that, but we'll leave it. So if score is greater than or equal to 90, it should return A. Else if, or elif, score is less than 90 and score is greater than or equal to 80, return B. Else if score is less than 80 and score is greater than or equal to 70, return C. And then of course this will look exactly the same, but with 70 and score is greater than or equal to 60, return D. Else return F. Now, as I was typing that out, if you were astute, if you were paying attention, really thinking about it, you should have realized that due to the flow of my statements here, some of this could maybe be condensed into better conditionals, better conditional statements. For example, down here, we didn't need to check to see if the score is less than 60 because we know if it doesn't hit any of these up here, it's going to be, by definition, less than 60. So we don't need to do another check down here. We can just leave it at return F for else. Similarly here, if we have already failed out of the statements out here, if these statements all returned false already, then we don't need to check to see if this score is less than 70, because we know that if it did not fulfill these above here, then the score is by definition less than 70. Same thing up here. If the score did not fulfill the above requirements, then we know that the score is less than 80. Same thing here. If it did not fulfill the above requirements, we know that the score is less than 90. So if you wrote out those both of those statements, both of those if statements, when you were originally doing the logic, that's fine. Those work that way just fine. But there is you should always, I think, in my opinion, try to write the most simple version of the logic that you possibly can, which in this case, due to the way that we have structured our logic here, where it checks for scores from highest to lowest, that means that you can, without fail, make sure that it's always going to drop down to the next lowest one, and so you don't have to do the double check on whether it is between our two intervals.